Hi there, my name is Amo, and I'm going to give you a quick intro and overview to PolyPop Live. So PolyPop Live is essentially an application that lets you record and live stream video. But the neat thing about it is that it's built on top of a highly customizable graphic system. And you can use this graphic system to build visually interesting scenes and interactive experiences for your viewers. So let's take a look at how it works. So on a basic level, we can build and work with 2D layouts. So in this case, I'm going to just make my webcam the full screen. I can bring in shapes, I can bring in text, images, pre-baked videos, as well as our game capture or our application capture. So this is kind of what we know already and what we're familiar with, but we can fully work with this kind of layout if we wish. But PolyPop can do so much more. So for instance, PolyPop, in this case we have a 3D object that we have here, and it's reacting with physics in our space on our screen. And we can, for instance, on the push of a button or in response to receiving an alert, we can have these objects come in, and these objects are now all interacting correctly with physics. And if we keep tweaking and playing around here, we can make this thing, for instance, attract all these objects or repel them. And again, the idea is to kind of connect this to our alerts, these various systems to our alert, to kind of create interesting responses. Here's another example of mapping the webcam onto these 3D boxes that are falling from the sky onto the bottom of our screen. In this scene, for instance, PolyPop has these unique kind of rendering objects. In this case, this thing is called a split flap, and what it does is it animates text using these kind of old school bus terminal style or text rendering systems with flipping text letters. And we also have a depth of field effect here, so we can also put things in focus and out of focus. So this is another example of just another interesting visual element that you can play with in PolyPop. In this scene, we have user cards. So these would be cards that display the profile images of our users, our subscribers, the people in our chat room. And we can play with these user cards to kind of design an interesting layout in this particular scene. So for instance, we can fill the whole screen with our users, and maybe we want to rotate this to kind of create a nice visual effect. And so we could have a scene here that we switch to, and it shows our current subscribers, and then maybe we can layer in some additional things on top of this to kind of build out a scene that's interesting, that uses our users, our viewers, as the central focus. In scene 5, this is an example of some interesting image filters that PolyPop supports. In this case, it's like a halftone effect, and you can really combine them and create all sorts of interesting visual effects this way as well. And in this scene, we have particle effects. Here's another interesting dynamic effect that's kind of rendering kind of an interesting look on our screen. And in this case, we can play around with the colors of the particles, for instance. There's like a million, there's hundreds of properties that we can play with to kind of achieve all sorts of interesting visual results. So another thing that we might want to do, for instance, is, again, maybe we want to hit a button. Every time we hit a button, it causes something to expand. So for instance, let's bring in some 3D text here, and this 3D text, let's change its color, and we can say like, thanks. And then we can make this, in response to a button, for instance, expand. So I'm going to add an inflate action, and I'm going to connect our button push. Whenever I push the button A, I'm going to have it inflate this. So now every time we hit A, it says thanks, and it expands out. So this is another example. This kind of shows the flexibility of PolyPop in connecting things and connecting our inputs to our visual elements to kind of create really unique broadcasts. So now I'm going to go over the fundamentals of the product to kind of get a sense of what its workflow is. So I'm going to start with an empty scene to get this going. So on the left side of the application, we have the source library. Here we can add in all the various inputs we want to be able to work with. Things like webcam, mics, 3D models, images, audio clips, etc. We can also add web services here and other inputs that generate alerts. These alerts in turn can be used to influence stuff in our scenes. For instance, if we bring in the Twitch source and connect to our account, we can trigger stuff in our show when certain alerts fire, like when someone new subscribes to our channel. In general, with the source library, we only want to bring in the sources once, and then we can kind of use it throughout our scenes, and we'll see how that works in a moment. On the right side of the UI is the scene layout, where we can add elements and layers to our canvas and configure them. If we press this plus button here, we can browse through all the different types of objects that we can add to our scenes. Now, some of these objects require sources. So for instance, if I add this 3D screen here to our canvas and I make it a bit bigger here, it requires a source, which in this case, since I haven't added it yet, I'm going to go ahead and add a webcam source. and then I'm going to assign it to it by just drag and dropping it onto it. And so that's the workflow between our source library and our scene layout, basically. And on the top right of the UI, you'll find the scene switcher. And so here we can add new scenes and switch between them by clicking on them. Lastly, at the bottom is the output panel, and it's here where we can start recording a video or start live streaming. So for instance, if I click this little configure button here, I can configure my account with Twitch or YouTube Live or Facebook Live. You can put all those credentials in there and then just start live streaming by just clicking the button. The last thing to point out here is the starting points button. If we open this up, in here we'll find various themes that we came up with that we think you might enjoy to get you kind of up and running fast. And also these interactive tutorials. Definitely check these out. These will guide you step by step through various features in the application that I've kind of glossed over, and will kind of get you up to speed really quickly. And so it's a nice way to kind of learn the app. That wraps up this overview video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you next time.